If anyone was looking for pride in shirts and tie, I would gladly point to Isaac, because every morning Isaac walked through the glass doors of Silvercrest Consulting as if the floor borrowed money from his shoes, and he liked it when the security man stood up quickly and said, "Good morning, sir." He liked it when the reception phone stopped ringing because everyone wanted to greet him. He also liked it when people whispered, "That's him," because in his mind, he was already the man after the man, and very soon he would be the man himself. He told himself this every morning as he straightened his tie and watched his reflection in the elevator, and he smiled because the mirror always agreed with him. Isaac was the smartest employee in the firm, and clients liked him because he delivered on time and under budget. Now, that fueled his pride more because he believed delivery was the only thing that mattered, and if he talked anyhow or walked like the ground owed him rent, then people should understand that excellence is not shyness. He did not come from money, and he did not like to say it, but the hunger of his childhood lived inside his chest like a small engine that never slept. His father had been a proud carpenter who smiled only when the wood came to life, while his mother constantly told him to keep his head high so that the world would not step on his face. And he took that lesson like the medicine he drank every day. Then he mixed it with praise from school, work, and strangers, and soon it became strong and heavy. But Isaac did not care because he was winning. He once dated Hannah, a gentle lady, Miriam, a lively lady, and Sarah, a lady who said please and thank you to waiters. But they all left him for the same reason. After telling him, "You love your reflection more than you love a person," well, he shrugged them off because in his mind, respect is a thing other people give when they see your results. And he was sure that when he becomes manager, the right woman will respect him naturally, so the wrong ones can keep walking away. His friend and colleague Eli would always caution him and talk to him straight. "Isaac, respect is a currency, and if you spend it all on yourself, you will have nothing to pay people when you need help." But Isaac would laugh and say, "I don't care, my work pays for me." Now, inside Silvercrest, Isaac was the star analyst, and he held the complicated accounts the way a pilot holds a shaking plane. However, he was not a good teammate because he didn't try. He would cut people off in meetings and say things like, "Let me help you say it well." He would take a junior's idea, polish it, and call it the team's idea, while the team looked at the table, and he would often send long emails at 11:58 p.m. and demand answers by 7 a.m. the next day. When people complained, he would say, "We are building a legacy, not a playground," because he believed that was leadership. What he did not know was that some people were afraid of him, some people were tired of him, and a small number of people wanted him to fall, not because they were wicked, but because they were human. His boss, Benjamin, liked Isaac's numbers and results, but he did not like Isaac's attitude. He had tried to tell him different times that people are part of the project. Isaac would nod, but the nod only meant he had heard the sound, but not the meaning. Isaac kept moving and telling himself that the chair Benjamin would soon vacate was already his own. So he started picking out paint colors for his future office in his head. He even said he would buy a plant that looked expensive and alive. He smiled, walked, and waited. He would often brag to Eli, "It is almost time," and Eli advised him, "Remember to bend when you rise." But Isaac scoffed, "I don't need to bend. I will wave from the top." He continued this way until the day HR sent a calendar invite for a leadership announcement. Isaac was so confident that he bought a brand new blue suit, bought new shoes, and on that day, he came early, sat at the front row, and rehearsed a short, humble speech that was not humble at all. His friend Eli nudged Isaac and whispered, "Congratulations in advance," and Isaac smiled like a man who had already eaten the cake. Just then, Benjamin cleared his throat and said, Silvercrest is growing because of leadership, and we are very particular when it comes to leadership, which is why I will be stepping down for the new force. At this point, Isaac felt his heart beat like a drum, and then Benjamin continued, "Please welcome our new strategy division manager, Rebecca Jacobs." Everyone froze. Just then, a young woman walked in calmly, holding a file tucked under her arm. She shook hands around the table and said, "Hi, good to meet you all." Everyone clapped, but Isaac did not clap. His smile fell off his face like a button that was not sewn well on a shirt, and he stared at Benjamin as if the man had pronounced the name wrongly. But Benjamin did not even look at him. Rebecca spoke for a few minutes. She thanked the board for the trust, expressed her respect for the work already done, and said that she would listen first and stay second. Everyone nodded because the words were soft and strong at the same time, but Isaac kept still, boiling in anger. When the clapping ended, he stood up fast and walked out before anyone could stop him. He walked straight to Benjamin's office without knocking in anger and said, "So, after everything I have done for this company, you bring a younger woman to lead me?" Benjamin folded his hands and said, "Sit, please." But Isaac did not sit. Benjamin continued anyway. "Isaac, you are brilliant and nobody doubts it. But leadership is not only about brilliance, it is also about memory. Unfortunately, people would always remember how you make them feel." Isaac argued, "Numbers don't have feelings," but Benjamin corrected, "People do, and people carry numbers." At that moment, Isaac felt like a loser. He went to the break room and drank water, but it tasted like vinegar. He looked around and saw people smiling, probably at his defeat. He even heard two junior colleagues say, "At least we can breathe now. Maybe we can ask questions without being cut off again." He stood there with the cup in his hand and felt like a joke. He texted Eli, "They brought a little girl to sit on my chair." But Eli called him at once and warned, "Be careful with your words, Isaac." But Isaac insisted, "I earned it." Eli shrugged. "Maybe you earned the numbers and lost the people." However, Isaac refused to accept the humiliation. He sat at his desk, opened a spreadsheet and stared at it. He told himself that he would not bow, that if Rebecca wants leadership, she will have to labor for it. As a result, when he went home that day, he slept with his heart tight and he woke up ready to fight. The morning Rebecca started, she moved from desk to desk and asked what people were working on. She listened without checking her phone, took notes respectfully and said thank you to the juniors. Later that day, she called a short team meeting and said, "We will keep what works, but fix what hurts. We will do it together, and I will not pretend I know everything. So please, teach me what you know." Everyone was impressed and relaxed, while Isaac stood at his back with his arms folded like a gate. Later on, she scheduled a one-on-one meeting with him, but after waiting without seeing him, she came to his desk and said, "Isaac, can we talk?" Isaac didn't even look up at her. He bluntly said, "Send an email." She frowned. "I already did that." He looked up and shrugged. "Well, I didn't see it." Rebecca stood there for 1 second, smiled and said, "It's fine. Let's meet at 2 p.m. She left, but he did not come at that time. Even when she sent a gentle follow-up, he replied at 6 p.m. with one line, "I am busy." She chose to ignore it because she believed patience was a very important tool. She went on to assign him a small task to check their flow. She sent him a brief with 3 steps and a deadline, but Isaac did a different thing with 6 steps and no deadline. To make matters worse, he sent it to the client before she could review. He took the disrespect further by cutting her short in meetings like a bad song. He would say, "What she means is," and then he would go on to use his own words to complete the sentence. Rebecca would pause to let him finish, and then she would continue. Thank you, Isaac. As I was saying, he called her fake Harvard princess, but she pretended not to hear. She only continued to try to make things work out between them, but each time, Isaac kept frustrating her efforts. She once brought coffee to him and tried to convince him, Isaac, your work is gold, but gold needs a setting, and the setting is the team. We need your strength, but we also need your warmth. Isaac smiled wickedly and said, warmth is for blankets. Rebecca inhaled and said, our clients buy confidence and care. But he countered, that's not true. Our clients only buy results. Isaac also started meeting his juniors alone and giving them tasks that frustrated her plan. He would send out late night instructions that caused confusion in the morning, and when she asked for a status report, he would send a link that did not open, all in a bid to frustrate her. Even when she requested for it to be resent, he would dribble her and finally send it at 8:59 p.m. with a note, done. Now, that was when Rebecca knew that this was not just about work, it was about war. It got bad that the team began to split into two camps, and some people went where the old power lived, while few people stood with Rebecca. Benjamin noticed the tension, but he did not interfere because he wanted Rebecca to prove that she would be able to handle her team. Weeks later, a big client pitch came in, and Rebecca shared a clear plan with roles, rehearsal times, and a draft narrative that joined everyone's pieces like a puzzle. She asked for comments by Friday, but by Thursday night, Isaac sent another version that rearranged everything. He even copied the client's contacts for transparency. Rebecca did not reply right away, but in the morning, she called a stand-up and addressed everyone. We will present one voice, and that voice will be ours, not mine, not his, not ours. She then asked Isaac to walk through his changes, and surprisingly, he did it with speed without complaints. However, Rebecca went back to her desk and documented all the deviation and resistance she had faced from Isaac, after which she sent it to HR for record. Then she sent a separate note to Isaac. Please direct all client communications through me as agreed, and please attend our alignment session at 2 p.m. today. But by 2 p.m. she waited and waited, but Isaac didn't turn up. Monday came and the clouds sat lower over the sky, as if it already knew war was coming. It was the long prepared day of the big client pitch for Alon Tech Industries, a deal worth millions. This was the kind of deal that earns firms awards and headlines. Rebecca had spent 2 weeks preparing and stitching everyone's work together like a quilt. She had given Isaac a simple but critical role: handle the numbers, present them exactly as aligned, and stay within the agreed flow so the story would be seamless. By 9 a.m., the boardroom was filled. Rebecca opened the pitch and walked them through the strategy slides smoothly. Everything moved like water until it was Isaac's turn. She glanced at him and nodded, which was a signal they had rehearsed. But Isaac, who was still holding on to his wounded pride, smiled mischievously and switched to a completely different presentation. Instead of following the joint plan, he pulled out his own deck, one she had never seen, one he had secretly built over the weekend. He stood tall and addressed the clients. Ladies and gentlemen, I believe there is a smarter way to think about your expansion plans. The client blinked in surprise. Rebecca froze and her chest tightened as Isaac confidently contradicted everything she had just presented. Some colleagues shifted uncomfortably in their chairs. Others exchanged quick glances. Some were excited while some were terrified. Isaac was brilliant, no doubt. His alternative plan was clever, but it did not match anything in their agreed strategy. And so, by the end of his presentation, the client's team looked confused, unconvinced, and cautious. The once warm energy in the room went cold. The CEO thanked them politely and said they would think about it, but everyone knew what that meant. The deal was gone. Everyone went back to their desk in silence. Rebecca went straight to her desk without a word. But 2 hours later, Isaac received an email marked formal query. Subject: query for insubordination. Isaac, your actions during today's Alontech pitch directly contradicted the agreed strategy and resulted in significant damage to client trust. Please explain why you deviated from instructions and failed to route your alternative proposal for prior review. Regards, Rebecca Jacobs. Isaac read the email and laughed a hard, bitter sound that made two interns at the next desk flinch. He stood, marched into Rebecca's office without knocking, and threw the printed letter on her desk. You are lucky to even have me in this company. If you knew how much I have done here, you would be thanking me instead of writing childish queries. You think some foreign degree makes you better than me? Rebecca stayed seated and calm. This isn't personal, Isaac. It is procedure. We agreed on one strategy. You broke alignment and we lost the deal as a result of that. This is your first warning. I expect better. Isaac scoffed, turned without replying, and slammed the door hard enough that the glass panel trembled. Later, in the lunchroom, some colleagues whispered, "This guy is digging his own grave." Pride will not allow him breathe small, but Isaac brushed past them, grabbed his coffee, and muttered under his breath, "I am untouchable." After that incident, Rebecca tried to reset the working relationship. She gave Isaac space, handled meetings carefully, and even started assigning him smaller and less client-facing tasks to reduce conflicts. But Isaac saw this as an insult, so he sent the second storm. Rebecca assigned Isaac to prepare a financial risk report for a key investor presentation. She emailed the brief 3 times, gave him 7 days, and reminded him politely on day 5. Well, Isaac didn't reply any of those mails, and on the morning of the deadline, there was still nothing in her inbox. Rebecca walked over to his desk and said, "Isaac, I really need that report now. The deck goes out in an hour." Without looking up, Isaac muttered, "I didn't do it." She blinked. You didn't do it?" "Yes," Isaac replied. "I don't take orders from kids. I have been here longer than you've been paying taxes." Everyone stopped typing and the office went quiet. Rebecca nodded slowly, walked back to her desk, and sent him a second formal query. Subject: second query for non-compliance. Isaac, failure to deliver your assigned task despite multiple reminders is unacceptable and has put the investor presentation at risk. This is your second official warning. Please treat this with utmost seriousness. Regards, Rebecca Jacobs. HR got copied this time. However, when Isaac received the letter, he printed it, waved it in the air in the lunchroom, and said loudly, "Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you the best employee in disobedience award." Laughter erupted around the room. Some smiled nervously while others shook their heads. Later, Eli found him by the parking lot and grabbed his shoulder. "Isaac, listen to me. You are walking into fire. They are building a strong case against you. If you get one more query, company policy demands termination." But Isaac pulled his hand away. "Let them try. They wouldn't dare lose me." Unknown to him, Rebecca was documenting everything and HR was watching closely. Everyone else could see the cracks forming except for Isaac. And then the final strike came faster than anyone expected. Silvercrest had just landed a huge potential client, and Rebecca assigned Isaac a critical role. She sent him a detailed email outlining the responsibilities and timelines, and he replied only once, writing, "Noted." The presentation day came. The client sat in the boardroom. Coffee was served, the projector was on, and Rebecca began the opening remarks. She then called on Isaac to present his section, but she was met with silence. She looked around, only to realize that his chair was empty. She dialed his number, but no answer came. She emailed him, but got no reply. Isaac simply didn't show up. Rebecca had to carry on with the presentation by herself, answered clients' questions and secured the deal, but she documented everything. The next day, HR summoned Isaac. When he entered the room, Rebecca was there. The HR director slid an envelope across the table. "Isaac, this is your third query. Effective immediately. Your employment is terminated." Isaac stared at the letter, then at Rebecca, and his pride screamed louder than his heartbeat. "You can't do this," he protested. "Company policy can," she replied. And just like that, Isaac stood up slowly, gathered his things, and walked through the office one last time. Nobody said a word or stood up for him, and that silence told him everything. They had never really respected him. They had only been avoiding him. For the first week, Isaac stayed at home, convinced that Silvercrest would call him back. He imagined that Benjamin would regret letting him go and that clients would demand his return, but the call never came. So he started to apply to new places. He applied to 10 firms, then 20, and then 50. At interviews, he claimed he left Silvercrest and they would ask him, "Why did you leave that place?" He would then lie, I decided it was time to grow elsewhere." They nodded and ended the interviews quickly, promising to get back to him, but they never did. And so, after 2 months, his savings ran out and he finally accepted an offer from a small struggling startup where his new manager, a 28-year-old fresh graduate, spoke to him like an intern and asked him to fetch printouts. He swallowed the insult because his rent needed paying. Every day, he sat in a cubicle smaller than his old chair, earning less than half his former salary, and taking instructions from people who barely knew half of what he knew. One evening, on his way home, Isaac walked past the Silvercrest building. The glass doors still shone, and the reception was still busy. Isaac stood outside for a long time. Finally, he shook his head and said to himself, "I thought I was untouchable, but I was replaceable all along." Now, it all makes sense what Eli had been saying. Respect is a currency, but I spent mine selfishly on myself. Thank you for watching the story. Kindly share your thoughts about the story with me in the comment section. Give the story a thumbs up and subscribe to this channel for more interesting stories. Thank you and remain blessed.